It was a Saturday in late August, one of those golden California mornings where the sun kisses your skin and the breeze makes you feel like life is good. I had just turned 29, and after years of grinding away in the corporate world, I was finally learning how to breathe again. I wasn't rich, but I was stable. I had a job I could tolerate, a few friends I genuinely cared about, and an apartment just blocks from the beach. That weekend, my best friend Jasmine was visiting from Seattle. We hadn't seen each other since before the pandemic. We planned everything: beach chairs, a cooler filled with sparkling water, sandwiches, and our favorite guilty pleasure, strawberry pop-tarts. As soon as we got to Venice Beach, it felt like the world slowed down. Kids were laughing, volleyballs flying, someone was playing Fleetwood Mac on a portable speaker. Jasmine was already tanning and flipping through a romance novel while I waded into the surf, letting the saltwater splash over my legs. That's when I first noticed it. A strange tightness in my chest. It wasn't pain exactly, more like pressure. Like someone was resting a brick right below my collarbone. I tried to shake it off. I'd had anxiety before, this had to be that. Right? I walked back to our blanket, heart skipping in that weird fluttery way that made me feel like I was on the verge of tears for no reason. I didn't want to ruin our day, so I plastered on a smile and sat next to Jasmine. "You okay?" she asked, peeking over her sunglasses. "Yeah," I lied, grabbing a drink. "Just tired, I think." We spent the next couple hours talking about everything and nothing. But the tightness wouldn't go away. In fact, it got worse. My left arm started feeling off. Not numb, but heavy. Like I'd been lifting weights when I hadn't even touched the gym in weeks. Then the nausea hit. Out of nowhere, my stomach turned. I told Jasmine I was going to the bathroom, but I barely made it to the public restroom before I was heaving into the sink, waves of dizziness hitting me like the tide. By the time I stumbled back to our blanket, I could barely stand. My skin felt clammy, my hands trembling. "I think something's wrong," I finally admitted, tears now welling up. Jasmine stood so fast she knocked over her drink. "Okay, let's go to urgent care right now." But urgent care never happened, because as we walked toward the parking lot, I collapsed. Everything went black, and when I woke up, I was in the ER with wires taped to my chest, an oxygen tube in my nose, and a nurse saying the words I never thought I'd hear at my age: "You may have had a heart attack." I stared at the nurse, convinced I'd misheard her. A what?" I croaked, my throat dry and my voice barely audible. "A cardiac event," she clarified gently. "We're still running tests, but your EKG showed some abnormalities and your troponin levels are elevated." Cardiac event? Troponin? None of it made sense. "I'm 29, I said. "I don't even eat red meat. I do yoga. I take vitamins." The nurse offered a sad smile. "It happens more often than you'd think, especially in women your age. Sometimes the symptoms aren't textbook." Jasmine rushed into the room a few minutes later, her face pale and her eyes red. "Oh my God, I thought you died," she whispered, gripping my hand like she'd never let go. "I thought I did too," I said, my voice cracking. The doctor came in shortly after. Middle-aged, kind eyes, firm voice. He explained that I had experienced something called an STEMI, a non-ST elevation myocardial infarction. Basically a mild heart attack, but still serious. My arteries weren't completely blocked, but something had caused stress to the heart muscle. "They didn't know why yet. We're going to admit you," he said. "You'll stay overnight, maybe longer. We need to do more imaging. Possibly a cardiac catheterization." It didn't feel real. None of it did. I lay there in the hospital bed, wires hooked to my chest, heart monitor beeping steadily, wondering what on earth I did wrong. The guilt hit fast and hard. Had I ignored signs? Missed something crucial? Was this my fault? Over the next 24 hours, my world shifted in ways I didn't expect. Nurses came and went. My phone buzzed with missed calls and texts I didn't have the energy to answer. I kept replaying that moment on the beach over and over, how normal everything had seemed just minutes before I crashed to the ground. The cardiologist came in the next morning with a look that told me something was off. He sat beside me and pulled up my file on his tablet. "We're seeing some unusual patterns," he began. "Your coronary arteries look clean. There's no significant blockage. But your heart muscle shows signs of inflammation." I blinked. "So I didn't have a heart attack?" "You did," he said. "But not in the traditional sense. You had what's called myocarditis, inflammation of the heart. And we believe it was likely triggered by a virus." "A virus?" I repeated, baffled. "Like the flu?" "Possibly. Or even a mild cold you didn't notice." Sometimes the body fights it off, but in rare cases, it turns on itself and attacks the heart tissue. The beach, the salty breeze, the chest tightness. It wasn't anxiety, it was the beginning of something far worse. They kept me in the hospital for 4 more days. I couldn't walk across the room without getting winded. The doctors started me on anti-inflammatories and beta blockers. They told me to avoid caffeine, alcohol, and stress. That last part made me laugh. How could I not be stressed, knowing my own immune system had nearly killed me? When I was finally discharged, I wasn't the same person who walked into the ER. I was fragile, exhausted, haunted by the fact that I'd ignored every symptom because I thought I was too young, too healthy, too normal to be sick, but the worst was yet to come, because healing wasn't just physical, it was emotional. And the truth behind how I got here would unravel more than just my health. Recovery wasn't what I thought it would be. I pictured soft blankets, Netflix binges, maybe some healing walks on the beach. Instead, it was insomnia, palpitations that struck out of nowhere, and a constant fear that my heart would just stop. They called it post-viral myocarditis. But the virus wasn't even the hardest part. It was the aftermath. My energy was gone, completely drained. Even climbing the stairs in my apartment felt like scaling Everest. I had to quit my job, not because I wanted to, but because focusing on emails and spreadsheets felt impossible with the brain fog. I couldn't remember names, appointments, even words sometimes. My muscles ached constantly. I'd sleep for 12 hours and still wake up exhausted. The worst part? Every doctor visit ended the same way. Your labs look fine. Give it time. It's probably anxiety. I wanted to scream. It wasn't anxiety when my heart raced for no reason while I was brushing my teeth. It wasn't anxiety when I fainted in the kitchen 2 weeks after I left the hospital. Jasmine had flown back to Seattle by then, so I was alone when I hit the floor. Woke up with a bruised cheekbone and a full-body panic that I might not survive the night. That's when I started joining online forums, places where people like me were gathering to share stories of strange post-viral symptoms, fatigue, dizziness, chest pain, memory loss. Some had been like this for years. They called it long haul or long COVID, though many hadn't even tested positive. Others, like me, had different viruses that sparked their spiral. It was a whole hidden community of people who looked fine, but were anything but point. One night, I found a woman named Danielle in a support group. She was also 29. Also had myocarditis after a mild cold. We FaceTimed and it was like talking to a mirror. Same symptoms, same confusion, same terror. But she was 6 months ahead of me in her journey and still struggling. That terrified me more than anything. I had to move in with my parents, she told me. I was tired. I couldn't afford rent. Couldn't hold a job. Most of my friends don't understand. They think I'm exaggerating. I nodded silently. I hadn't told many people what was going on because what was going on? Even I couldn't explain it. One moment I was living my normal life. The next, I was a shadow of myself. One afternoon, I tried walking on the beach again. It was sunny. Families everywhere. I sat on a bench and watched a toddler laugh as she chased a seagull. And I just started crying, not because I was in pain, but because I missed me. I missed the version of me who could dance in the kitchen, run errands, laugh at brunch, stay out past midnight. That version felt like a ghost now. I didn't know if she'd ever come back. What no one tells you about getting sick, especially with something invisible, is how quickly people disappear. My boss stopped checking in. Friends stopped texting. Even my own family didn't really get it. But you look fine, they'd say. You're lucky it wasn't worse. But what if this was worse? What if living like this, half alive, was the real tragedy? What began as one beach day had turned into a war with my own body, and I was losing. Months passed. Fall bled into winter, and my life shrunk to the size of my apartment. I kept the curtains drawn most days because sunlight felt like a cruel reminder of everything I was missing. I stopped counting how many times I'd heard the words anxiety, panic disorder, or deconditioning. I wasn't crazy. I knew something was still wrong. The chest pressure came and went. The heart flutters were unpredictable. My legs would randomly turn to jelly after standing for too long. I had to crawl to the bathroom once, humiliating, terrifying, and still, doctors looked at me like I was exaggerating. Or maybe even seeking attention. You might benefit from seeing a therapist, one said with a patronizing tone. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. I started to believe it was all in my head, until I met Dr. Ramirez. She was a cardiologist with a reputation for taking complex cases. And she actually listened, like really listened. She let me speak without interrupting, without side-eyeing my chart, without that "here we go again" sigh I'd grown to dread. She ordered a tilt table test, something no other doctor had even mentioned. The result? Your body isn't regulating blood flow properly when you stand, she explained, looking me square in the eyes. You have postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, POTS, a real diagnosis that I felt relief and rage that IT had taken 4 months, 5 visits, 2 hospital admissions, and countless brush-offs to get here. Doctor Ramirez explained that POTS was often triggered by a viral illness, and guess what? Myocarditis was a known culprit. It all connected. The racing heart, the dizziness, the brain fog. It wasn't anxiety. It wasn't in my head. It's going to take time, she said gently. But now we know what we're dealing with, and that gives us power. I cried in my car after that appointment, not because I was sad, but because someone finally validated the hell I'd been living in. The treatment wasn't magic. There's no cure for POTS, but with salt tablets, compression stockings, medication, and a modified exercise routine, I started to regain pieces of my life. Tiny pieces, like being able to do laundry without passing out, or taking a short walk on the beach without fear. The beach, the same place where everything had started that I went back there one crisp January afternoon. Alone this time. No music, no cooler, no Pop-Tarts. Just me and the waves. And I didn't cry, I just sat there and breathed. Really breathed. Because for the first time in months, I felt seen. Heard. Believed that I wasn't too young or too healthy to get sick. I was human, and my body had fought a battle most people couldn't see. And I was still standing, bruised, but standing. That beach didn't just mark the start of my illness. It marked the start of my second life. That I used to think healing was a finish line. Like once I got the diagnosis, the treatment, the right doctor, everything would snap back to normal. But it didn't. It never does. Healing is slower than anyone warns you. It's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. It's waking up one day feeling almost like yourself, and the next, back in bed with your heart pounding for no reason. But even in the setbacks, something changed. I learned how to listen to my body. Really listen. Not push through. Not ignore. Not chalk things up to just being tired. I started tracking my symptoms, noticing patterns, learning what helped and what hurt. I began seeing a therapist. Not because it was in my head, but because surviving a health crisis changes you. It messes with your sense of safety, your identity, your relationships. And about that, some people drifted away. They couldn't understand why I couldn't just come out, or why I canceled plans last minute. It hurt, but I let them go. Because when you go through something like this, you realize who's truly in your corner. And who never was. Jasmine stayed. She checked in weekly, sometimes daily. She didn't treat me like I was fragile, but she did treat me like I mattered. And that made all the difference. As months passed, I slowly found rhythm again. I started working part-time from home, writing freelance articles about chronic illness and invisible symptoms. I poured everything I'd been through into those words. And to my surprise, people read them. They emailed me, shared their own stories. I wasn't just shouting into the void anymore. I was helping people feel less alone. And that gave my pain purpose. Eventually, I launched a small blog called Behind the Symptoms, yes, like your channel. I wanted to give voice to people like me. The ones who looked fine but were fighting battles beneath the surface. It grew faster than I imagined. I began doing Zoom interviews, even got invited to speak on a health podcast. One day, a message popped up in my inbox from a woman named Rachel. She wrote, "I watched your video about your heart inflammation and POTS. I've been feeling the same things for months, and my doctor keeps telling me it's just anxiety. After watching you speak, I pushed for more tests. I just got diagnosed with myocarditis too. You literally saved my life." I read it 3 times before I started sobbing. That beach day that nearly killed me. had led to this. Rachel. Every person I'd helped feel seen. The version of me who now wakes up and doesn't take a single breath for granted. That I still struggle sometimes. I still have to pace myself, hydrate constantly, manage symptoms. But I'm alive. I'm here. And more importantly, I know who I am now. Not just a girl who got sick, but a survivor. An advocate. A storyteller. That one beach day did change my life forever. Not because it marked the end of everything I knew, but because it forced me to become someone stronger than I ever imagined I could be.